Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight we're going to have updates for you in a moment on the new FBI censorship scandal, as well as the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination 59 years ago, which is now confirmed. It's all real. But first, because it's Friday and we're in a sentimental mood, we'd like to take a moment to say goodbye to one of our all-time favorite members of Congress, Mr. Adam Kinzinger of Kankakee, Illinois, ladies and gentlemen. Kinzinger was first elected to the House 12 years ago. And for the bulk of his time in office, he served utterly without distinction in virtual anonymity. A few of his constituents had heard of him, but none expressed interest in learning more. Then, in 2018, came the transformation. That was the year that Adam Kinzinger turned 40, and things began to change inside of him. The first signs were subtle but unmistakable. Choking up at a car insurance commercial, opening an Instagram account and posting pictures of himself, wearing spandex bike shorts to Starbucks without shame, and sometimes with a fanny pack. By 2021, Kinzinger had a full-blown case of male menopause, with all the familiar painful symptoms: mood swings, hot flashes, food cravings, uncontrollable weeping. A lesser man would have retreated from public life, chosen new pronouns, and transitioned in private. But Adam Kinzinger chose another path. He chose to be a role model. He wanted other middle-aged men to know there is life after a hormonal imbalance. And so on July 27th, 2021, Adam Kinzinger bravely came out of the closet as a weepy man. You may remember the moment.
I never expected a day to be quite as emotional for me as it has been. But you guys won. You guys held. You know, democracies are not defined by our bad days.
Imagine the courage that took. Yes, I am emotionally incontinent. Yes, I am utterly irrational. No, I will not be silent. In Washington, Kinzinger's performance was considered deeply inspirational. Here's a man who has no control of himself at all, so we'd better put him in charge of important things. Kinzinger quickly became regarded as an essential voice on foreign policy. When the world hangs in the balance, you want a guy who cries a lot. For his part, Kinzinger demonstrated a remarkable ability to make any situation on the planet, no matter how complex or weighty, all about him. Diplomacy by narcissism. Here he was yesterday on the House floor in his final, yes, emotion-laden address.
History has proven that American isolation from the world affairs is dangerous. Over the years, I've been privileged to lead the effort on supporting American leadership in a world drowning in faux strongmen. Advocating for the rights of Syrian men, women, and children to live without fear of Assad's death squads shouldn't be political. That's just simply the right thing to do. Advocating for stronger American assistance in Ukraine to counter Putin's illegal invasion shouldn't be political. That's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's just the right thing to do. See, the world actually isn't complicated. In fact, the world is simple. It's like an original made-for-TV movie on Lifetime. The kind where you burn through 2 bags of Skinny Pop just trying to keep your tears in check. So if Adam Kinzinger is doing something in a foreign country with guns, by definition, it's, quote, just the right thing to do. Like in Syria. Kinzinger's often expressed concern for Syria's men, women, and children is what matters. And because that concern matters so much, Kinzinger has pushed hard to continue the neocon proxy war in Syria. Result? Syria now has no economy left, and there's a massive cholera outbreak in progress. Men, women, and children are dying in huge numbers because it's just the right thing to do. Same in Ukraine. Kinzinger made that clear the other day when he responded personally to a Twitter account called Cat Turd. Because when you're one of Washington's leading authorities on foreign policy, you spend a lot of time on Twitter reading accounts with names like Cat Turd. So the other day, Cat Turd made the mistake of posting a meme that seemed to mock the colors of the Ukrainian flag. Colors that are sacred to Adam Kinzinger and every other empathetic soccer mom in her mid-40s. You can imagine how offensive that was. It was like telling an off-color joke about Meghan Markle. It could not stand. And so alone and battling debilitating hot flashes in his kitchen, fighting the urge to open yet another bag of Chips Ahoy, Adam Kinzinger fought back. Literal evil, he wrote in a late-night response to Cat Turd. If I met you in person, it would not end well. For you, sicko. Whoa! Hear that, Cat Turd? It will not end well for you. That's not a pillow fight Adam Kinzinger is talking about. That's a full-on slap fight with hair pulling. This is real. You'd better apologize. Our heart goes out to Cat Turd tonight, who's probably cowering in a litter box somewhere, waiting for Adam Kinzinger to show up with sharpened nails. Mock the Ukrainian flag, get scratched. Those are the rules, Cat Turd. It's a tough town. Meow. But speaking of how it will all end, how's it going to end for Adam Kinzinger? Well, we suspect it'll end like it began, in anonymity. In just weeks, Adam Kinzinger will be another CNN contributor. No one will ever see him again. But we will never forget him. Adam Kinzinger will live forever in our hearts as an example of what a man can be when he stops trying to be a man and unleashes the emotionally fragile divorced single mom within. Have another glass of Chardonnay and listen to me cry. Yes, Ms. Kinzinger, we will. So here it is one last time. Au revoir, Adam Kinzinger. See you at Soul Cycle. Sorry, had to do that. This is a Fox News alert. The journalist Matt Taibbi has just published a new set of Twitter files, his assessment of internal documents from Twitter that have come to the surface under its new ownership, Elon Musk. The documents show the FBI had regular contact with Twitter and directed Twitter to censor accounts that were clearly posting satire. Of course, no matter what they're posting, it is illegal for the FBI to be directing censorship, flat out, a violation of our law. But they did it anyway. One senior FBI agent in San Francisco, Elvis Chan, who has his pronouns listed on the FBI website, of course, even sent a list of satire accounts to Twitter so they would be banned. Now, you might recall that DOJ is prosecuting a man called Douglas Mackey for the crime of posting memes that offended Hillary Clinton. For doing that, he faces up to 10 years in prison. Virtually no one has covered that story, but it's real. So these new Twitter files show that the FBI was deeply involved in what was happening on Twitter and going after people for making fun of Democrats. Right, in a free country. Charlie Hurt is with the Washington Times. He joins us to assess what we have just learned about this. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us. So on the one level, it's ridiculous, of course, that our biggest law enforcement agency is trying to force people to stop telling jokes. But on the other hand, this is a crime, unless I'm missing something.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. It's a clear violation of the First Amendment. And, you know, I think that this latest dump reveals, literally there were so many interactions between the FBI and other branches of the federal government and Twitter where they got together to collude on what was allowed to be shared on the platform and what was not allowed to be reported on the platform, that they were actually opening up new back channels on platforms that I had never heard of before, many viewers had never heard of before, in order for them to keep in constant touch with one another. And the thing to remember is, if this were happening during the Pentagon Papers, and we were realizing this degree of collusion between the FBI, the CIA, the federal government, and the New York Times, or if we woke up today and there was this level of collusion between Fox News and the federal government in the middle of an election to determine what we would or would not report, there would rightly be an outcry like we've never seen before. And yet it happens here, and an alarming number of the supposedly mainstream media, they're just like whatever.
Well, I wouldn't even say they're the media. They're not journalists. They're sock puppets for headquarters. Right. I mean, they're working on behalf of the state against the population of the country. I mean, the FBI was working for a political party, the one in charge. So how is this different from what the secret police do in authoritarian countries?
Absolutely not different at all. And, you know, what's kind of amusing here is as soon as Elon Musk starts kicking journalists off of Twitter for doxing him, they start squealing like stuck pigs. Of course, these same people never said a word, not a peep out of them, when the government, in collusion with Twitter, began silencing doctors and scientists at the height of a pandemic. Not a word from these people. And so the idea that we're in a business where we're supposed to be the protectors of the First Amendment, you're on your own, man. These people are not protecting the First Amendment for anyone but themselves and for the most powerful government on the planet.
Yeah, they're literally FBI informants posing as journalists, and they should be called that, I think. Charlie Hurt, great to see you tonight. Thank you for the clarity on that.
Great to see you.
So we've really tried hard, done our best to ignore the Prince Harry and Meghan Markle saga. They've got a Netflix show that apparently has failed. But we had a chance to speak to Meghan Markle's sister, who's seen the show and says it is filled with lies, and of course she would know, and we're going to talk to her next. Plus an update on that Canadian teacher wearing the enormous prosthetic breasts and hauling all the kids in his class into his weird fetish life. We'll tell you what's happening there next. Well, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle are the subject of a new Netflix show, which made us a little insecure. We thought maybe people will watch that rather than this, but it turns out a lot of people aren't watching it. It's gotten terrible reviews. Turns out most people don't want to spend hours looking at two of the most privileged people in the world pretend to be victims. And there's a lot of that in the show. Here's Prince Harry, a man without a job, demanding an apology from his family.
Everything that's happened to us was always going to happen to us, because if you speak truth to power, that's how they respond. I've had to make peace with the fact that probably never going to get genuine accountability or a genuine apology. You know, my wife and I we're moving on. We're focused on what's coming next.
So you may be thinking, well, wait a second. Well, there are a lot of people in the West, including in Great Britain, maybe especially, who are getting a lot poorer right now. Some people are going to freeze to death this winter because fuel prices are so high. So these are people who are literally members of the royal family complaining about their lives? That's kind of nauseating, no? Well, no, because they're really good people. And they prove it in the Netflix show. At one point, Meghan Markle says she was very close to her grandmother. She took care of her grandmother until she died. And that's why she's a good person. Watch this. So she supplied a picture of herself comforting her grandmother to Netflix. Now, how does the average person know if that's true or not? Well, of course, you would not know unless you were related to Meghan Markle. Samantha is. That's her sister. And of course, in the Netflix show, Meghan Markle lashes out at her sister too. Watch. I don't even know this person who claims to be my sister. Who to believe? Well, we thought it'd be interesting to speak to Meghan Markle's sister, Samantha Markle. She joins us tonight. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on tonight. So what do you make of her claim that she has no idea who you are?
Hi, Tucker. Thanks for having me. Wow. Just, you know, it's been just a series of lies. And I can't believe we were essentially looking at $100 million fake news PR machine. It's just, it's projection at its finest, and it's almost comical. God, just so not true. And the whole grandmother thing, that just did it for us. I think my grandmother would be rolling over in her grave if she saw that. And she didn't take care of her. She visited her. She never made apple butter with her because my grandmother was making apple butter like in the 1970s before Meg was even born. So it's been so far-fetched. It's like a tragic comedy, especially sadly for our family, for the royals, and here we are.
Well, she does seem to have left quite a trail of destruction in her wake, but she also has, as you pointed out in your first sentence, a $100 million PR machine on her side, telling her story in soft focus. What's it like to be up against that?
Well, that's been on continuum. I mean, I found out from an attorney in London that there was an entrenched media agenda against me back in 2018. So on continuum, there's been, you know, this series of fake news stories, and I couldn't bite it. Let's face it. You know, companies like Sunshine Sachs that are powerhouses are really powerful, and so is the printed word. We didn't know how we were going to deal with it until, you know, like they say, water seeks its own level. Eventually the truth comes out, and when it does, and when the dust settles, I thought, you know, truth has to stand for something. Truth wins. So here we are.
I think it does. She's been able to keep the truth at bay, this is my read, by accusing anyone who asks questions or criticizes her of racism.
Right.
How do you, has she called you a racist yet? her sister?
No, there were some weird PR stories in the beginning that alluded to that, but that's not realistic. We were an interracial family. And I think, you know, if we all look back when they were the Fab Four, when they were, you know, jet setting, when we looked at that incredible multicultural wedding, and then Prince Charles had paid for and chosen the choir and the bishop, I heard. So there wasn't any racism there until a point at which they began being criticized for making Hollywood deals while they were working royals. You know, if you work at McDonald's, anywhere you work, there is prohibited conduct. There are rules, there are boundaries. And it seems to me that they, you know, got into their position, they had a lot of fun, they loved the accolades and the perks, but when it came time to being accountable and being responsible and following rules, that seems to be when everything fell apart, and that's life. So I don't believe the racism, you know, the race card, the victim card, wham. Somebody call the wambulance. It's just not real.
Someone call the wambulance. Okay, I'm stealing that. Last question, would you have any advice for her in-laws? She's married into this big and storied family and seems to have disrupted it pretty profoundly. What would you counsel them?
In my honest opinion, you know, I think apathy in a situation like this, when you're dealing with someone who appears to lack empathy, remorse, and shame, I think being empathetic can be a dangerous thing, and so can apathy. I think he needs to act, you know, certainly swiftly and severely, and lay down the boundaries, because they seem to not like boundaries, and I think it sets a dangerous precedent to let this go on.
I think that's wise advice, really, for any family. Samantha Markle, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tucker.
So it's Friday, so we're updating stories we brought you over the past several months. You remember, of course, the Canadian shop teacher who decided to pull his entire classroom into his sexual fetishes, the guy who showed up wearing grotesquely oversized prosthetic breasts in the class. Now, the local school board in Ontario, the Halton District School Board, is defending the teacher. Of course, they're attacking the kids, banning the students from taking pictures of him. And one of the few Canadian journalists who's covering this, and has from the beginning, is a man called David Menzies with Rebel News. To highlight the absurdity of all of this, Menzies just dropped off a petition to the school board dressed in the same fetish gear as the teacher.
The saying goes, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. So let's do the Linda Carter thing and see if the Menzoid can transition himself. I'd like to present a petition called Protect the Students. We've had over 16,000 signatures. It reads, the Halton District School Board and the Director of Education, Curtis Innes, should be fired for allowing a female identifying shop teacher to wear enormous fake breasts that are barely contained by see-through blouses while teaching.
The guy with the gun shows up because he's saying things they don't like. It really has become a police state in Canada. That's not an overstatement. David Menzies is the reporter we just mentioned with Rebel News in Canada. He joins us tonight. David, thanks so much for coming on. It didn't seem like they got the joke when they sent the cop over to you. Like they didn't think it was funny?
Oh, no, indeed, Tucker, and a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me. This is the thing about the uber woke Halton District School Board, Tucker, is that they're all down with radical transgenderism, including a teacher who dresses up as a grotesque caricature of a woman as if he's a drag queen, but only for the kids in shop class to see that, not when it comes to their school board meeting. So when I came there, what happened after that is we received a letter, and Tucker, for asking insensitive questions, I am banned for life at the Halton District School Board head office, all of its properties and all of its schools. I will be immediately arrested with trespass. They've said that in writing, so you're absolutely right. Canada is devolving into a police state with every passing week, my friend.
So it's okay to wag the prosthetic breasts in the face of children in your classroom, but it's not okay to show up wearing them to a school board meeting. Did they explain why?
Oh, no, they don't explain. They don't communicate. They know better. And the fact of the matter is, Tucker, as I've said from day one, there is 3 theories as to what is going on with this teacher, Lemieux. We call him Busty Lemieux. It sounds like a vaudeville performer from way back when. But these are the theories. One is this is a genuine transition. I put that right in the paper shredder right away, Tucker, because if you're a member of the trans community, if you're a man going female or female going male, you want to blend in with the other sex. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to look like, as I said before, a drag queen performer, a grotesque caricature of a woman. So that leaves us with 2 theories, Tucker. One, and there's a lot of social media chatter about this, is that he's basically taking the piss out of the Halton District School Board. He is punking them. He is saying, okay, you're so down with wokeism, how's this for you? In which case he might be a bit of a hero. The other theory, Tucker, and this is the one I'm leaning to more and more as I get more and more evidence, is that this is someone who suffers from a condition called autogenophilia. And basically, this involves when men are transitioning to women, not all of them, but some of them, they have this condition where when they wear the apparel of women, when they put on the props of women, like a fake breast, they actually get sexually aroused. And I'm leaning more to that, Tucker, because a woman who would not come on camera with me, but more importantly, she had photographic evidence. Lemieux showed up, I think it was 2 years ago, at a theater in Burlington. It was for a dance recital with little girls, I believe 8 to 12. It was a private event, Tucker. And what happened is he snuck in his full drag queen regalia at, the intermission, sat right in the first row. And I was told that it looked like this individual was getting aroused watching these little girls dance. Now, all the mothers, as you can imagine, are saying, who is this person? Whose child belongs to that person? So after the number, they went down there. They said, do you have a child here? Because this is a private event. He said no. They said, you have to leave, and he left. Now, Tucker, what mature male would, without a child performing, would dress up in that outlandish costume and then sit there in the front row looking at these little girls dance? But here's the rub. For the Halton District School Board to even do their due diligence and investigate, to ask questions, is this a guy pranking us, or is this a guy suffering from some kind of sexual perversion? That would seem to be, to me, at least for their being, an act of transphobia. They will not even ask questions. They will not investigate. They're just accepting it on face value. And meanwhile, Tucker, they had a committee investigate, can we have a dress code for faculty? One exists for students, and if a girl at Oakville Trafalgar dressed like that, she's expelled. And the findings were this: we can't implement a dress code for the faculty because it opens us up to liability. Tucker, does that make sense? Why can you have a dress code for kids, but you can't for the adults?
Because they don't care about the kids, as you've
exactly.
I think, conclusively shown. David Menzies, Rebel News, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Merry Christmas, Tucker.
Merry Christmas. So as we told you last night, in the middle of the controversy over whether the U.S. government is going to release thousands of documents related to the assassination of JFK, we spoke to someone who has direct knowledge of those documents. And in fact, it turns out, yes, the CIA was involved in the murder of the President of the United States. Now, thousands of those documents remain under seal tonight. A law professor at NYU is suing to force them to be released to the public. He joins us next to explain why. Representatives, of course, in the last midterm election last month, but somehow they seem like they're going to be able to pass a spending bill before Republicans take control next month. And if that happens, that bill will ensure that the southern border can't really be closed. The invasion will continue. Here's the amazing thing. Some Republicans in the Senate are working with Democrats to get this bill passed before Christmas. They don't have to do that. They could fund the government through January, then pass a new one when Republicans are seated. What is going on here? It seems like a great betrayal. Larry Kudlow is the former director of the National Economic Council. He's also the host, of course, of Kudlow on Fox Business, and our friend. He joins us tonight. Larry, thanks so much for coming on. You've watched Congress a long time. Why would Mitch McConnell, for example, go along with something like this?
Well, your point, your word is right. I mean, because McConnell's going along and the Senate leadership is going along with the Democrats, it is a betrayal of the House, the new House, the Republican House, Kevin McCarthy's leadership, presumably. And if this omnibus bill is passed in the Senate, it'll probably pass the House with Democratic votes. What it means is it won't give McCarthy and company a chance to rewrite the budget, to have different priorities, to cut spending where it's necessary, to refund areas like the border, for example, which needs some additional funds for various things, to cut taxes, to open up the spigots for oil and gas. It shuts all that off for almost a year. And why McConnell is part of this betrayal, I will never know. It is a terrible idea. It's bad economics because it's more spending, and it's really bad politics because it will damage the Republican Party.
But it also seems like an offense against democracy. I thought the party that won the election gets to make the decisions, but this would set in stone Democratic priorities, even though Democrats lost the House. Like, that doesn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah, it's like 4 or 5 people in a room, you know, a nice smoke-filled dark room, making decisions for 350 million Americans. It, by the way, is takes away the results of the recent election, which gave the Republicans the House for the first time in several years, and it maintains the status quo. And by the way, overall, we'll spend 150 or 200 billion on top of all the other spending, which threatens the inflation story, which in turn means the Federal Reserve might be even tougher and we'll wind up with a very bad recession. I mean, this is so undemocratic, it's beyond belief. I mean, Rand Paul was on my show a couple nights ago. He said the GOP senators have completely given up the power of the purse, and that they've emasculated the Republican Party in the process, and it won't even give the House a chance. Give them a shot. Why is McConnell not willing to give McCarthy and the new House GOP a shot at making all these changes in policies, in the budgets, and so forth and so on? It is beyond belief to me. And like I say, it's bad politics. It's also bad economics. I mean, Republicans were running as the party that would cut spending and reduce inflation. This kind of stuff with earmarks everywhere, by the way, tons of earmarks by senators who are retiring. I mean, it just undercuts all the GOP promises.
That's for sure. Larry Kudlow, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So for 59 years, the U.S. government has held in secret a trove of documents that might explain what exactly happened on November 22nd, 1963. The CIA has pushed to keep those files secret. They are still secret, even as of yesterday. Thousands of them remain in government custody. We can't know. Why is that? Is there a benign explanation for it? Well, of course, there isn't. We spoke to someone who had accessed those documents who said that they show the CIA was directly involved in the murder of an American president. If that's not true, someone should correct us, but no one has. We heard from the intel community today, and what we heard was, whoever told you that broke the law by telling you that. But no one denied that it was true. Larry Schnapp is one of the reasons we saw what we have seen so far. He's been pushing hard for more documents. He's an adjunct professor of law at NYU, and he's assessed the documents we did get yesterday. Larry, thanks a lot for coming on. Did we learn anything new? Did you learn anything new as you assessed what they released yesterday?
Well, hi, Tucker. First, I want to set the record straight that I'm an adjunct professor at New York Law School, not NYU. I don't want anyone to pretend to think I'm being accused of being at the wrong law school. Yesterday was very disappointing, frustrating, and infuriating, because essentially what we got yesterday was old wine packaged in new bottles. The 13,000 records that were released yesterday were basically records that had already been released, and there may be some less redactions. So the spin that the CIA is doing, and unfortunately the New York Times and the Washington Post have took it hook, line, and sinker, there are still, this is a big nothing burger yesterday. And this is particularly frustrating to my group because we spent the last year pressing President Biden to do the right thing and stop this obstruction that's been going on for 59 years. When Congress passed the JFK Records Act in 1992, they said time had passed, that all records should have a presumption of disclosure, and that records should be done expeditiously. A records review board was established. They spent 4 years scouring the federal government for files. They put them in a collection in the National Archives. While they were time limited in 1998, their work remains. And nothing has been really done since 1998. So we also this year tried to get Carolyn Maloney, the chair of the Oversight Committee, to hold a hearing on why the executive branch is not complying with the Records Act. And I got to tell you, the reason I came on tonight, one of the reasons, is because you and your viewers are in a unique position. Now that the House is going to be taken over by Congress, James Comer is going to be in charge of the Oversight Committee. And I think that we have to put pressure on him to hold an oversight hearing where he will call in for public testimony the CIA, the FBI, the trustee, the RFK family trust that's holding records back, and NBC, who has records, assassination records, that they have refused to release to the ARB, the Assassinations Review Board.
Why, really quickly, why would NBC be sitting on documents they refuse to release?
So Judge Thunheim, who was the chair of the review board, told a story last week that the review board contacted Walter Sheridan, who was the right-hand man for Robert Kennedy, and they wanted his records. He worked with Bobby Kennedy when Bobby Kennedy was Department of Justice. He also did some secret investigation by Bobby after the assassination. His records were up at the JFK library. As soon as he was asked for these records, he went up to the JFK library, grabbed them, delivered them to NBC in New York. And he had been hired by NBC in the late 60s to monitor the Jim Garrison trial, which was the impetus for the JFK movie. And NBC took possession of those records and refused to give them to the ARB. And to show you the level of obstruction in our government, the ARB, the review board, prepared a subpoena to serve on NBC, and they refused to. The Department of Justice refused to serve it.
It's all beyond belief. And the more details you learn, the more shocking it is. Professor, I appreciate your work on this and for coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one really fast, in fact, immediate way to answer these questions would be to speak to someone who ran the CIA. And as it happens, we know someone who ran the CIA. His name is Mike Pompeo. We like him and we respect him. He's very smart. And so we've asked him 2 days in a row, please come on the show and answer a very simple question. Was the CIA involved in the murder of a U.S. president? We have spoken to someone fairly definitively who said, yes, the CIA was involved. And Mike Pompeo, for the second day in a row, refused to come on this show. We think that's odd, and we hope he'll reconsider. Well, next up, a toddler was swallowed whole by a hippo, but there's a happy ending. The toddler survived, amazingly. Details straight ahead. You're probably familiar with the story of Jonah and the whale. God sent a whale to swallow Jonah, kept him from drowning. Jonah gets eaten, then he repents, and the whale regurgitates him, and he survives. So that's obviously a myth, right? Well, something like that may have just happened in real life. A 2-year-old toddler in Uganda was swallowed whole by a hippo. Then a Good Samaritan showed up and threw stones at the hippo, and the hippo vomited the toddler back up, totally unharmed. Is this a myth? Is it real? Forrest Galanti has been attacked by hippos many times. He's therefore our in-house hippo expert, and he joins us to assess. Forrest, thank you so much for coming on today. Don't know a lot of people who are familiar with, you know, the dietary habits of hippos. You are. Does this sound real, this story?
You know, it's a fascinating story, Tucker, and I think the thing that gives it credibility is the fact that, contrary to your Fantasia and your cartoons, hippos are incredibly aggressive, defensive animals. In fact, what you're seeing in this frame right now is hippos in a defensive posture. Now, these animals have an 1,800 psi bite force, so if they wanted to squash that child, they would have. What's more likely is this is a 1 in a million. The hippo was showing some aggression, some territorial display. The kid ended up in its mouth. The hippo panicked probably just as much as the child did and sort of spit the hippo out, sort of in coincidence with the rock throwing. It's not that this hippo wanted to kill the child, otherwise he absolutely would have.
So I think because they're fat, we assume they're nice, but hippos are nasty animals, correct?
Tucker, they're actually the deadliest land mammal in Africa. They kill around 500 people per year. And the reason being, right, they're actually not as aggressive as you might think. They're very nervous, very skittish animals. And what typically happens is if they can't sink down in the water where they feel completely safe, if they're in shallow water, or rather if they're on land, they're very nervy and skittish. And what happens is you startle one and it just goes straight into fight or flight mode. And most of the time that's fight mode. And yeah, they're many bush guides in Africa will tell you they're their nemesis because they are very aggressive, very scary animals.
You wouldn't want to be killed by a hippo, but honestly, it's kind of a cool way to go. You have been attacked by a hippo. What was that like?
Well, I grew up in Zimbabwe in southern Africa, and my family ran safari businesses. So from a very young age, I was on the Zambezi River, which has a lot of hippos. And, you know, I had a canoe flipped over. I've been charged by a hippo. And of all of the wildlife encounters that I've ever had doing all of the various projects that I've done, hippos always seem like the riskiest animal to be around. And look at them. I mean, they look adorable, right? You look at that shot on screen and you're like, it's cuddly. I want to feed it a watermelon. But the truth is, unless they're hand raised like this one right here, they are absolutely terrifying. They're big. They can run 20 miles an hour. They have these massive teeth. They have this incredible bite force, and they have no problem taking on any animal or human being that stand in their way.
But people do hand raise them?
Not only do some people hand raise them, Tucker, Pablo Escobar, the famous drug dealer, imported some into Colombia. And if you want to talk about hippos and you want to talk about real hippo problems, the biggest hippo problem in the world are the hippos breeding like crazy in the Rio Magdalena in Colombia, Central America. These are African animals. They shouldn't be there. You want to hear a crazy story, look into that, because they are unbelievable what's going on. And people, that's a status symbol, or it was for Pablo, right? They collect these animals, they keep these animals as a status symbol because of their big, giant stature. And even those hand-raised ones are causing some very big problems down in Colombia.
Boy, what a misleading animal. I wouldn't have thought they were randy. You know, I wouldn't think they were breeding like rabbits, but apparently they are. Amazing. Forrest Lanty, thank you for coming on tonight. Great to see you.
My pleasure.
Almost Christmas. We still have Christmas ornaments for you. If you want one, they're at tuckercarlson.com.